They set a seat for the dog but told me there was no room for emotional weight. I didn't respond. I just stood there in my son's dining room, watching Jessica arrange the Thanksgiving table with military precision. Every detail was perfect. The autumn centerpiece, the crystal glasses, the cloth napkins folded like small sculptures. Even Buster, their golden retriever, had his own place setting complete with a ceramic bowl painted with little turkeys. "Mom, you understand, right?" David's voice came from behind me, that same tone he'd used as a teenager when he'd broken something and hoped I wouldn't notice. "Jessica thinks it might be better if you sat in the living room this year. You know how you get during family gatherings. How I get." The words sat in my chest like stones. I turned to look at my son, this man I'd raised alone after his father died when David was 12. The same boy I'd worked double shifts to put through college, whose wedding I'd paid for, whose mortgage I'd been quietly helping with for the past 3 years. How do I get, David? Before we continue, comment where you're watching from and subscribe to the channel. We'd love to see how far our stories are reaching. The question slipped out before I could stop it. Jessica appeared beside him, her perfectly manicured hand resting on his arm like she was marking her territory. "Oh, Margaret, you know we love you. It's just that holiday dinners can be so stressful and, well..." She paused, tilting her head with that practiced sympathy I'd seen her use on telemarketers. "You tend to bring a certain emotional heaviness to things. The kids notice it too. The kids. My grandchildren, Emma and Jake, who were currently in the den playing video games, probably unaware that their grandmother had just been banished from her own family's table. Emma was 15 now, Jake 13. When had they stopped running to hug me when I arrived? When had they started looking at their phones instead of talking to me? I brought the green bean casserole," I said quietly, holding up the dish I'd spent all morning preparing. The same recipe I'd made for every family gathering for the past 20 years. "Your grandmother's recipe." "Oh, that's sweet," Jessica said, not moving to take it from me. "But I actually made a new green bean dish this year. Organic, from Pinterest. More aligned with our family's current dietary goals. Our family. Not including me, apparently." I set the casserole on the kitchen counter, watching as Jessica immediately moved it aside to make room for her phone. Through the doorway, I could see the dining room table. 8 chairs. David and Jessica at either end, like king and queen. Emma and Jake on one side. Jessica's parents, who'd driven down from Portland, on the other. And yes, there was Buster's special place setting right next to Jessica's chair. "Where exactly am I supposed to sit?" I asked. "The living room has that comfortable recliner," Jessica said brightly. "You always say how much your back bothers you. This way, you can really relax." David wouldn't meet my eyes. "It's just for this year, Mom. While we figure out the best seating arrangement. As if I were a piece of furniture they couldn't quite place. I'd been coming to this house, the house I'd helped them buy, for 5 years now. I'd never needed a seating arrangement before." "I see." I looked around the kitchen, at the family photos covering the refrigerator. Most were recent: Jessica's family vacations, the kids' school events, David's work parties. I searched for pictures of me and found one, tucked behind a pizza delivery magnet. Me holding newborn Emma at the hospital. I was barely visible. "Dinner's in about an hour," Jessica announced, already turning away. "David, can you help me with the turkey?" And just like that, I was dismissed. I walked into the living room and sat in the recliner, the one that faced away from the dining room. From here, I could hear everything but see nothing. The laughter, the clinking of glasses, Jessica's parents talking about their cruise to Alaska, David telling some story about work that made everyone laugh. No one called out to ask if I wanted wine. No one mentioned that I was missing from the conversation. It was as if I had simply ceased to exist the moment I left the kitchen. I sat there for what felt like hours, listening to my family celebrate without me. At some point, Emma brought me a plate: turkey, mashed potatoes, Jessica's Pinterest green beans, no stuffing, which had always been my favorite part of Thanksgiving dinner. "Grandma?" Emma's voice was soft, uncertain. "Mom said you wanted to eat in here?" I looked up at this beautiful girl who had my eyes and her grandfather's stubborn chin. "Did she?" Emma shifted uncomfortably. "Are you okay?" "I'm fine, sweetheart." The lie came easily. "Just tired." She hesitated like she wanted to say something else, then glanced back toward the dining room where Jessica's voice was calling her name. I should go back. Of course. I ate alone, listening to them toast and laugh and plan their Black Friday shopping trip, a trip I wasn't invited to join. When I finished, I carried my plate to the kitchen, washed it, and set it in the dish rack. My green bean casserole sat untouched on the counter. "Leaving already?" Jessica asked when she saw me gathering my purse and coat. "Yes." I didn't elaborate, Drive safely, David called from the dining room, but he didn't get up, didn't walk me to the door, didn't ask why I was leaving before dessert. I stood in their doorway for a moment, looking back at the scene I was leaving. They'd already forgotten I was there. Jessica was serving pie. Her parents were admiring the centerpiece. The kids were arguing about something, and David was refilling wine glasses. A perfect family tableau. Buster looked up at me from his place at the table, tail wagging slightly, and I realized he was the only one who seemed to notice I was leaving. As I drove home through the quiet streets of our neighborhood, past houses glowing with warm light and families gathered around their own tables, I made a decision. I pulled out my phone at the next red light and opened my banking app. The automatic payment to David and Jessica's mortgage company was scheduled for next week, like it had been every month for 3 years. I canceled it. Then I canceled the automatic transfer to Emma's college savings account, and the one to Jake's, and the payment for David's life insurance premium. One by one, I stopped every payment. My fingers moved steadily across the screen, each tap cutting another thread that bound me to their expectations. I didn't feel angry. I didn't feel vindictive. I felt something I hadn't experienced in years. I felt free. The morning after Thanksgiving, I woke up in my own bed for the first time in months without that familiar knot in my stomach. No anxiety about what Jessica might say, no worry about whether I'd said the wrong thing, no mental rehearsal of how to make myself smaller, quieter, less of a burden. I made coffee in my kitchen, sat at my own table, and for a few precious moments, I almost forgot about yesterday. Then my phone rang. "Mom?" David's voice was tight. "We need to talk." "Good morning to you too, son. The mortgage payment didn't go through. The bank called Jessica this morning." I took a slow sip of my coffee. "Did they? Mom, what's going on? Did you forget to transfer the money?" Forget. As if 30 years of never missing a bill, never being late with a payment, never failing to keep my word somehow meant I might just forget something so important. "I didn't forget anything, David." Silence stretched between us. I could hear Jessica in the background, her voice sharp and urgent, though I couldn't make out the words. "Look, if this is about yesterday, what about yesterday? Jessica thinks maybe you felt a little left out. She was just trying to make things easier for everyone. You know how chaotic holiday dinners can get with all the kids and—" "David," I set down my coffee cup. "Where did I sit yesterday?" "What?" "At dinner. Where was my seat?" Another pause. "Mom, you said your back was bothering you. The recliner was more comfortable." The lie came so easily to him. I wondered when he'd learn to do that, to rewrite reality, to make it more palatable. Had I taught him that? Had his father? I never said my back was bothering me. Well, Jessica thought I shouldn't sit at the table with my own family. She made that decision for me. You stood there and let her. That's not... Mom, you're being dramatic. Dramatic. There was that word again. The same word Jessica used whenever I expressed any emotion that wasn't complete gratitude for whatever scraps of attention they threw my way. "The mortgage payment," I said calmly. "You'll need to handle that yourself from now on." "What do you mean?" "I mean I'm no longer paying your mortgage, David, or the children's college funds, or your life insurance, or the property taxes on the lake house." I heard him drop something. "Mom, you can't be serious." "Mom, this is our home. Emma and Jake live here." "Yes, they do. So perhaps you should figure out how to pay for it." "We can't afford the mortgage without your help. You know that." I did know that. I'd known it for 3 years, ever since David lost his job at the architectural firm and took the lower-paying position at the county planning office. I'd known it when Jessica quit her part-time job because the kids need me at home more, though both children were in high school and perfectly capable of getting themselves home. I'd known it when they bought the boat last summer and the new SUV this fall. That sounds like something you and Jessica should discuss. "Mom, please, we're family." Family. The word that had been used to guilt me into so many things over the years. Family was why I should understand when they canceled plans with me at the last minute. Family was why I should babysit on short notice when they wanted date nights. Family was why I should contribute to Emma's spring break trip to Mexico while I hadn't taken a vacation in 5 years. "When your father died," I said slowly, "I had to figure out how to pay for everything too. The house, your school clothes, your college tuition. I didn't have anyone to fall back on. That was different." "How?" You were the parent. That's what parents do. And what do children do?" "David, what do children do for their parents?" He was quiet for a long moment. In the background, I could hear Jessica's voice getting louder, more insistent. "Look, can we just talk about this in person? Jessica wants to clear the air about yesterday. She feels terrible that you misunderstood. Misunderstood. Not that she had deliberately excluded me, humiliated me, made me feel unwanted in my own son's home. I had misunderstood her kindness. I understood perfectly. Mom, David, I need to go. I have things to do today. What things? The question caught me off guard. When was the last time anyone in my family had asked what I was doing, where I was going, how I was spending my time? They called when they needed something, visited when it was convenient for them, included me when it didn't interfere with their real plans. I'm having lunch with Barbara from my book club. Then I'm going to look at apartments. Apartments? Mom, what are you talking about? This house is too big for me now. It's time to downsize. That part wasn't true yet, but saying it felt good. Like a possibility I hadn't allowed myself to consider before. You can't sell the house. That's our inheritance. Our inheritance. Not your home, not the place where you raised me, not the house you've lived in for 30 years. Our inheritance. As if I were already dead. As if my purpose now was simply to preserve things for them to claim later. It's my house, David. I'll do with it what I choose. This is insane. You're being completely irrational. Irrational. Dramatic. Emotional. The words they used when I didn't behave the way they wanted. When I didn't accept their treatment with grateful silence. I have to go. Barbara's waiting. I hung up before he could respond. The truth was, I wasn't having lunch with Barbara. I wasn't looking at apartments. I was going to sit in my living room and think about the last 5 years, about how slowly and carefully I'd been erased from my own family. It started when David and Jessica got engaged. Small things at first. Jessica would suggest different restaurants for family dinners, places that were more her style. She'd reorganize holiday traditions, making them more efficient or more fun for the kids. She had opinions about everything, what gifts were appropriate for the grandchildren, what topics were suitable for dinner conversation, even what I should wear to family events. Margaret, that dress is a little formal, don't you think? She'd say, tilting her head with that concerned expression. We want the kids to feel comfortable approaching you. Or maybe you could bring flowers instead of dessert. I've already planned the perfect menu, and too many sweets just confuse the palate. Or the kids are at such a delicate age. They don't really understand when adults talk about sad things like your knee surgery or your friend's divorce. Could you try to keep things light? Each suggestion came wrapped in concern for my well-being, for the children's comfort, for the family's harmony. Jessica was just trying to help, David would say. She wanted everyone to get along. She was protecting the kids from unnecessary stress. Gradually, I learned to stay quiet during family gatherings. I brought flowers instead of food. I wore casual clothes that made me feel frumpy and underdressed. I smiled and nodded and asked safe questions about school and sports and weather. And slowly, I disappeared. The irony was that I'd done this before, in reverse. When David was small and acting out after his father's death, I'd learned to anticipate his needs, to smooth his path, to absorb his anger and frustration without complaint. I'd thought I was being a good mother, giving him stability and unconditional love. Now he was doing the same thing to me that I'd done to him, making me responsible for everyone else's comfort, while ignoring my own needs entirely. My phone buzzed with a text from Jessica. Margaret, I'm so sorry about the misunderstanding yesterday. Can we please talk? David is really upset and the kids are asking questions. Family is everything to us. I stared at the message for a long time. Then I deleted it without responding. For the first time in years, I had nowhere I needed to be. No one I needed to please. No crisis I needed to solve. I made myself another cup of coffee and settled into my favorite chair, the one by the window where I could see my garden and the street beyond. I thought about calling Barbara, or my sister Carol in Phoenix, or my old friend Linda from work, people I'd gradually lost touch with as my life became more and more centered around David's family, around making myself available for their needs. Instead, I just sat quietly and listened to my house. It felt different somehow, as if removing those automatic payments had lifted some invisible weight from the walls themselves. My phone rang again. David. I let it go to voicemail. Then again. Jessica this time. Voicemail. Then a text from Emma. Grandma, are you mad at us? That one stopped me cold. Sweet Emma, caught in the middle of something she couldn't possibly understand. I started to type back, to reassure her, to say of course I wasn't mad, that everything was fine, but then I stopped. Everything wasn't fine, and maybe it was time someone in this family acknowledged that. 3 days after Thanksgiving, they showed up at my door. I was in my garden, pulling the last of the dead marigolds before winter set in completely, when I heard car doors slamming in my driveway. Through the fence, I could see David's SUV and Jessica's car parked behind it. I stayed where I was, kneeling among the flower beds, my hands deep in the soil. There was something soothing about the work, about pulling away what was dead to make room for what might grow next spring. I heard footsteps on my front porch, then the doorbell. They could wait. The bell rang again, longer this time, then knocking. Mom, we know you're here. Your car's in the garage. David's voice carried that edge of impatience I remembered from his teenage years, when he couldn't understand why the world didn't move at his pace. I brushed the dirt from my hands and walked slowly to the front door. Through the peephole, I could see them standing on my porch like a delegation. David in his weekend khakis and polo shirt, Jessica in her perfectly coordinated athleisure outfit, both of them wearing expressions of determined concern. I opened the door but didn't invite them in. Margaret! Jessica's smile was so bright it could have powered the neighborhood. We brought coffee. She held up a cardboard tray from that expensive place downtown, the one where a single cup cost more than I used to spend on groceries for a day. Your favorite, vanilla latte with extra foam. It wasn't my favorite. I drank my coffee black and had for 30 years. But Jessica had decided months ago that I liked vanilla lattes, and correcting her had never seemed worth the fight. What do you want? I asked. David shifted uncomfortably. Can we come in? It's cold out here. I stepped aside and let them pass, but I didn't offer to take their coats. They settled themselves in my living room like they belonged there. Jessica perching on the edge of my sofa with her coffee, David taking the chair by the window. So, Jessica began, still smiling that relentless smile, we wanted to clear the air about Thanksgiving. The air seems fine to me. Mom, come on. David leaned forward, his hands clasped between his knees. You know we didn't mean to make you feel excluded, didn't you? Jessica's smile flickered slightly. Of course not. I was just trying to make sure everyone was comfortable. You seemed so tired when you arrived, and I thought maybe a quiet spot would be better for you. I wasn't tired. Well, you've been a little withdrawn lately. We thought maybe you were going through something. You know, with the holidays and everything. It can be hard for people your age. People your age. As if I were ancient and fragile instead of 58 and perfectly capable of sitting at a dinner table with my own family. There's nothing wrong with me, Jessica. Of course not, but maybe we could have handled things differently. Communication is so important in families, don't you think? I looked at this woman who had systematically erased me from my son's life, who spoke in therapy speak and corporate buzzwords, who had convinced my own son that I was the problem. You're right, I said. Communication is important. So let me communicate something clearly. I will no longer be paying your mortgage. Jessica's smile finally died. Margaret, you can't be serious. I'm completely serious. David stood up abruptly. Mom, this is crazy. You're punishing us for what? A seating arrangement? I'm not punishing anyone. I'm simply no longer choosing to pay for a house where I'm not welcome. You are welcome. Jessica's voice rose an octave. You're always welcome. We love having you over. Do you? Because yesterday you told me I bring emotional weight to family gatherings. You said the children notice it. Jessica flushed. I didn't mean it like that. How did you mean it? You sometimes seem sad, and it affects the mood. I was trying to protect everyone's enjoyment of the holiday. Protect them from me. That's not what I said. It's exactly what you said. David stepped between us. Look, this is getting out of hand. We're family. We should be able to work this out. When your father was dying, I said quietly, he made me promise to take care of you. Do you know what I thought that meant? David's face went pale. I'd never talked about those final days before, about the conversations we'd had when we knew he wasn't coming home from the hospital. I thought it meant making sure you had everything you needed. Education, opportunities, support. I thought it meant being there when things got hard. I looked around the room, at the family photos that included fewer and fewer pictures of me with each passing year. I never thought it meant paying for your life indefinitely, while you treated me like an embarrassment. We don't treat you like an embarrassment, Jessica protested. Don't you? When was the last time you invited me to one of your dinner parties? When did you last include me in your vacation plans? When did you last call just to see how I was doing, not because you needed something? Silence. You use me when it's convenient and ignore me when it's not. You take my money and exclude me from my own family. You've spent 5 years training my grandchildren to see me as someone to tolerate rather than someone to love. That's not fair, David said, but his voice lacked conviction. What's not fair is that I've been subsidizing your lifestyle while you slowly pushed me out of your lives. What's not fair is that you made me feel grateful for scraps of attention while you built a life that had no real place for me in it. Jessica stood up, her composure finally cracking. We never asked you to pay our mortgage. You offered. You're right. I did offer. When David lost his job and you were about to lose the house. I offered because I thought we were a family, and families help each other. But families also include each other. They don't set places for pets while banishing grandmothers to other rooms. It was one dinner. Jessica's voice was shrill now. One dinner where I was trying to manage a lot of moving pieces, and you're acting like we committed some terrible crime. It wasn't one dinner, Jessica. It was the culmination of 5 years of being slowly erased from my own family. David sank back into his chair. Mom, I didn't realize, if you felt excluded, why didn't you say something? The question was so innocent, so genuinely confused, that it almost broke my heart. Because of course I had said something. I'd said it in small ways, careful ways. I'd asked why I wasn't invited to things. I'd suggested activities we could do together. I'd tried to maintain connections with my grandchildren. But every time I'd spoken up, I'd been told I was being sensitive or dramatic or misunderstanding the situation. Every concern had been reframed as my problem, my perception, my inability to see how much they cared about me. I did say something. David, many times, you just didn't want to hear it. So what now? He asked. You're just going to cut us off? Never see us again? I'm going to stop pretending that paying your bills makes me part of your family. I'm going to stop accepting crumbs and calling it love. Jessica sat back down, her strategy shifting. Margaret, I think there's been a huge misunderstanding here. Maybe we should all take some time to cool off and then sit down and really talk about this. Family counseling, maybe? There are wonderful therapists who specialize in multi-generational issues. Multi-generational issues, as if the problem were that we came from different generations. Not that she had systematically isolated me from my own son and grandchildren. The only issue here, I said, is that you've convinced my son that I'm a burden instead of his mother, and he's let you. David flinched. Mom? That's not— When was the last time you called me just to talk? When did you last ask about my day? My friends? My interests? When did you last treat me like a person instead of a problem to be managed? He opened his mouth to answer, then closed it again. Here's what's going to happen, I continued. You're going to figure out how to pay your own bills. You're going to learn to be a family without using me as a bank account. And if you want a relationship with me, you're going to have to earn it the way people earn relationships, through respect, consideration, and genuine care. And if we can't make the mortgage payments, Jessica asked, her voice small now, then you'll need to make some difficult decisions. The same kinds of decisions I had to make when your husband's father died and left me with a child to raise and a house to pay for on a nurse's salary. I stood up, indicating that the conversation was over. You can see yourselves out. Mom, please. David's voice cracked slightly. Don't do this. I looked at my son, this man I'd loved and sacrificed for and protected from the moment he was born. I'm not doing anything to you, David. I'm finally doing something for me. They left without another word. I watched from my window as they sat in David's car for nearly 10 minutes, Jessica gesticulating wildly while David stared straight ahead. Finally, they drove away. I went back to my garden and finished pulling the dead flowers. The work felt different now, not just maintenance, but preparation, making space for something new to grow. That evening, Emma called. Grandma, Mom said you're mad at us. I'm not mad at you, sweetheart. But you're mad at Mom and Dad? I'm disappointed in how Emma, do you know why I've been helping with your house? Because we're family? That's right, because I love your father, and I love you and Jake. But love should go both ways, shouldn't it? A long pause. I guess so. How do you think your parents have been showing love to me? Another pause. Longer this time. I don't know. Neither do I, sweetheart. And that's something they need to figure out. After I hung up, I sat in my quiet house and thought about what came next. For the first time in years, I had no idea what that might be. And for the first time in years, that felt like freedom. 2 weeks passed in blessed silence. No calls demanding explanations. No texts full of manipulative apologies. No surprise visits. I began to think they'd finally understood that I meant what I said. I was wrong. The call came on a Tuesday evening while I was making dinner for one, something I'd forgotten I actually enjoyed. Cooking for myself meant I could have exactly what I wanted, when I wanted it. No accommodating Jessica's latest dietary restrictions or David's inexplicable hatred of anything green. Mrs. Morrison? The voice was crisp, professional. This is Janet Walsh from First National Bank. I'm calling about the Morrison family account. My blood went cold. The Morrison family account was something David had asked me to open 3 years ago, when he first started having money troubles. He'd said it would be easier for me to help with bills if we had a joint account. And like a fool, I'd agreed. I'd put my name on everything, the checking account, the savings account, even a credit line I'd never used. What about it? We've had some unusual activity on the account, and given that you're listed as the primary account holder, we wanted to verify some recent transactions. What kind of transactions? Large withdrawals, ma'am. Over the past 6 months, there have been several cashier's checks issued, totaling nearly $40,000. I sat down hard on my kitchen chair. $40,000? Yes, ma'am. The most recent was just yesterday. A check for $8,000 made out to Prestige Motors. Prestige Motors. That was where Jessica had bought her new BMW last month. The one she'd been so excited about, posting pictures of it all over social media with captions about blessed and grateful and dreams coming true. Can you tell me who authorized these withdrawals? The checks were authorized by David Morrison, ma'am. As a joint account holder, he has full access. But given the amounts involved, we wanted to make sure you were aware of the activity. After I hung up, I sat in my kitchen staring at the half-prepared dinner growing cold on my plate. $40,000, money I'd saved over years of careful living, of buying generic groceries and wearing clothes until they fell apart, of skipping vacations and social events to build a cushion for my retirement. Money David and Jessica had been spending on luxuries while crying poverty about their mortgage payments. I pulled out my laptop and logged into the bank's website. The account history read like a catalog of their lies. The boat David had said was a great deal from a friend, $12,000 from my account. The family vacation to Yellowstone Jessica had described as a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity we couldn't pass up, $6,000. Emma's spring break trip to Mexico that they'd said was partially funded by her part-time job, $3,000. They'd been systematically draining my retirement fund while telling me they couldn't afford their basic expenses. But what made me physically sick was the pattern of timing. Every withdrawal came within days of me expressing any dissatisfaction with how they were treating me. After I'd missed Emma's school play because no one told me about it, $5,000 for Jessica's girls' trip to Napa. After they'd forgotten my birthday completely, $3,000 for new furniture. After I'd tried to suggest we spend Christmas at my house for once, $8,000 for David's work clothes shopping spree. They'd been buying their way out of guilt with my own money. I printed out 2 years' worth of bank statements, my hands shaking with rage. Then I picked up my phone and called my lawyer. Robert, it's Margaret Morrison. I need to see you first thing tomorrow morning. The next morning, I sat in Robert Chen's office with the bank statements spread across his mahogany desk. Robert had been my lawyer since Bill died, helping me navigate probate and estate planning. He was a kind man in his 60s who'd never made me feel stupid for asking questions. Margaret, he said, looking up from the papers with concern written across his face. How long has this been going on? 3 years, since I opened the joint account. And you weren't aware of these withdrawals? I trusted them. I never checked the statements carefully. I just assumed they were using the money for necessities like we'd discussed. Robert leaned back in his chair. I'm afraid David had every legal right to access these funds as a joint account holder. However, if they misrepresented the purpose of the account to you, they told me it was for emergencies and basic expenses, house payments, utilities, car repairs, not luxury cars and vacations. That could constitute fraud, depending on how explicit their misrepresentations were. He tapped his pen against the desk. But proving it might be difficult without written documentation of what they told you. So they just get away with stealing $40,000 from me? It's not technically stealing if they had legal access to the account. But Margaret, we need to think about protecting your remaining assets. Do they have access to any other accounts? My stomach dropped. The savings account where I keep my emergency fund. It's linked to the checking account for overdraft protection. Robert was already reaching for his phone. We need to get you to the bank immediately. And we need to review all your financial accounts to see what else they might have access to. 3 hours later, I walked out of First National Bank feeling like I'd been hit by a truck. The emergency fund, $23,000 I'd saved over 15 years, was down to $1,200. David had been making withdrawals for months, each one just under the amount that would trigger an alert. I'd been so focused on the monthly mortgage payments I was making that I hadn't noticed them bleeding my accounts dry from the other direction. Mrs. Morrison, the bank manager had said with genuine sympathy, I wish you'd contacted us sooner. We could have set up account alerts or restricted access. But how could I have known to be suspicious of my own son? That evening, I called my sister Carol in Phoenix. We hadn't talked much since I'd gotten so wrapped up in David's family problems, and I wondered if she'd even want to hear from me. Margaret? Oh my God, it's so good to hear your voice. How are you? How's David? Actually, Carol, that's why I'm calling. I need to tell you something, and I need you to just listen without trying to fix it, okay? Of course, honey. What's wrong? I told her everything. The gradual exclusion from family events, the Thanksgiving disaster, the financial abuse I'd just discovered. Carol listened without interrupting, making small sounds of sympathy and outrage in all the right places. When I finished, there was a long silence. Maggie, she said finally, using the nickname only she was allowed to use. I have to tell you something. I've been worried about this for years. What do you mean? That Jessica. From the moment David introduced her, something felt off. Remember at their engagement party? She spent the whole evening talking about how David needed to establish healthy boundaries with family members who had unhealthy attachment patterns. I did remember. Jessica had cornered me that night and given me what felt like a lecture about how important it was for young couples to prioritize their nuclear family over extended family obligations. At the time, I'd thought she was just nervous about becoming part of our family. She was talking about me. Of course she was. And David just stood there nodding like she was dispensing wisdom from on high. I wanted to say something, but you seemed so happy that David had found someone. Why didn't you tell me? What would I have said? Your future daughter-in-law thinks you're emotionally unhealthy? You would have thought I was jealous or interfering. She was right. I would have defended Jessica, made excuses for her behavior, convinced myself that Carol was overreacting. There's something else, Carol continued. Last Christmas, when you couldn't come to Phoenix because David's family needed you for something, Emma had the flu. They needed me to help with Jake. I called David's house to wish everyone Merry Christmas and see how Emma was doing. She answered the phone herself. She was fine, Maggie. She was opening presents and laughing with friends. There was no flu. The words hit me like a physical blow. They'd lied to keep me from visiting my sister. They'd wanted me available for their needs while isolating me from everyone else in my life. How long has this been going on? I whispered. Years, honey. They've been slowly cutting you off from everyone who might give you perspective on how they're treating you. It's classic manipulation. After we hung up, I sat in my living room staring at the family photos on my mantelpiece. In the older ones, I looked relaxed, happy. But as the photos got more recent, I could see the change in my face, the forced smiles, the tension around my eyes, the way I seemed to be shrinking even as Jessica's presence in the photos grew larger and more dominant. I'd been so focused on trying to be the perfect mother and grandmother that I'd let them turn me into a ghost in my own family. My phone buzzed with a text from David. Mom, we really need to talk. There are some things you don't understand about our financial situation. I stared at the message for a long time. Then I typed back. I understand that you've stolen nearly $50,000 from me while lying about your financial situation. His response came immediately. It's not stealing. That money was for family expenses. BMW payments and vacations are not family expenses. How did you... Mom, you're checking up on us now? The audacity of it took my breath away. I'd discovered he'd been systematically draining my accounts, and he was upset that I'd found out about it. I didn't respond to his text. Instead, I called Robert Chen. Robert, it's Margaret. I want to explore my options for recovering the money they took, and I want to make sure they can never access my accounts again. I'll draw up the paperwork to remove David from all your accounts tomorrow. As for recovery, we'll need to document everything carefully. Keep all those text messages, Margaret. If David admits to taking the money for non-necessities, that could be useful. That night, I lay awake thinking about the conversation with Carol, about the years of manipulation I'd been too close to see. I thought about Bill, about what he would have said if he'd known his son would grow up to treat his mother this way. But mostly, I thought about the woman I used to be before I became so desperate for their approval that I'd lost track of my own worth. Tomorrow, I decided, I would start figuring out how to find her again. The first foreclosure notice arrived on a Friday. I know because Jessica called me at 7 in the morning, crying so hard I could barely understand her. Margaret, please, you have to help us. The bank is going to take the house. We're going to lose everything. I was sitting in my kitchen, drinking coffee and reading the newspaper like a normal person for the first time in years. No rushing to accommodate someone else's crisis. No dropping everything to solve someone else's problems. That's unfortunate, I said calmly. That's all you have to say? We're about to be homeless. You have 60 days to figure something out. That's more time than I had when your husband's father died. This is different. We have children. So did I, Jessica. One child who depended on me completely, not 2 teenagers who can understand that actions have consequences. She switched tactics, her voice becoming small and pitiful. Margaret, I know we made mistakes, but please don't punish Emma and Jake for our problems. I'm not punishing anyone. I'm simply no longer enabling you to live beyond your means at my expense. You've changed, she said finally, her voice cold. You used to care about family. I used to care about being used by people who called it family. The calls escalated over the next 2 weeks. David left voicemails ranging from angry to pleading. One made me laugh out loud. Mom, Dad would be so disappointed in how you're treating his grandchildren. Emma asked me yesterday why Grandma doesn't love us anymore. The manipulation was so transparent it was insulting. Using my dead husband against me, putting words in my granddaughter's mouth. Emma called me directly one evening, her voice shaky. Grandma, Mom said you hate us now. My heart clenched. I don't hate you, sweetheart. I love you very much. Then why won't you help us? Dad lost his job again, and Mom's crying all the time. David had lost his job again? This was news to me. When did your dad lose his job, Emma? Last month. He said not to tell you because it would stress you out more. Of course. Keep me in the dark while demanding I solve their problems. Emma, sometimes the best way to help someone you love is to let them learn from their mistakes. But what if we have to move schools? Honey, lots of families move and change schools. Sometimes families discover they're happier in a house they can actually afford, I guess. But Mom says you're being cruel. What do you think? A pause. I think maybe you got tired of always having to fix things for us. The wisdom in that 15-year-old voice nearly broke my heart. You're a smart girl, Emma. My neighbor Ruth knocked on my door one Tuesday morning, her face grim. Margaret, I thought you should know. There's been talk in the neighborhood about your son. What kind of talk? He's been telling people you cut them off out of spite, painting you as a vindictive old woman punishing them for some imagined slight. My stomach churned. In David's version, I was the villain. Jessica was the victim. Ruth, you've known me for 15 years. Do you believe that? She snorted. Of course not. I've watched you bend over backwards for that family. There's more. Jessica's talking about suing you for elder abuse. Elder abuse. They would claim I was incompetent. I called my lawyer immediately. Robert, they're threatening to sue me. Margaret, you're managing your own affairs and protecting your interests. That's what a competent adult should do. Adult children aren't entitled to their parents' money, no matter how long the support continued. That evening, I called my old friend Linda from the hospital. Linda, I owe you an apology. I've been a terrible friend these past few years. What are you talking about? I became so wrapped up in my son's problems that I lost myself. I was so afraid of being alone that I accepted being treated badly by the people I loved most. You sound different. I'm figuring out who I am when I'm not trying to solve everyone else's problems. We talked for over an hour. She invited me to a retirement party next month. I'd love to come, I said, and meant it. That evening, I got a text from an unknown number. This is Jake. Mom took away my phone, but I'm texting from a friend's. Are you really never going to help us again? I called the number. Jake? Grandma? Everyone's been saying you don't want to talk to us anymore. That's not true. I always want to talk to you and Emma. It's your parents I'm having problems with. Because of money? Your parents spent money on things they didn't need while telling me they couldn't afford basic expenses. Like your mother's car and vacations. A long pause. That doesn't seem fair. No, it doesn't. Will you ever forgive them? Forgiveness requires them to acknowledge what they did wrong and make real changes. So far, they're just angry that I won't keep enabling them. I love you, Grandma. I love you too, sweetheart. After we hung up, I sat in my living room and looked around at my peaceful house. For the first time in years, I wasn't waiting for the phone to ring with someone else's emergency. I was just living my own life. It felt like coming home to myself. 6 months later, I was pruning roses in my garden when the moving truck pulled up next door. I'd heard through Ruth that the Hendersons had finally sold their house, but I hadn't expected the new neighbors to arrive on such a beautiful Saturday morning. I was wiping dirt from my hands when I heard a familiar laugh. Emma appeared around the corner of the moving truck, carrying a box marked Emma's room in her neat handwriting. She looked taller somehow, more mature. Our eyes met across the garden fence. Hi, Grandma. Hello, sweetheart. She set down the box and walked to the fence. We moved into the apartment complex on Maple Street. It's smaller, but Mom says it's cozier. I nodded. How are you adjusting? It's okay. Jake and I share a bathroom now, which is annoying. But we can walk to school, and there's a pool. That sounds nice. She twisted a strand of hair around her finger. The same nervous habit she'd had as a little girl. Mom and Dad have been fighting less. Dad got a job at the community college teaching drafting classes. It doesn't pay as much as his old job, but he says he likes it better. I'm glad to hear that. Mom got a job too, at the dental office downtown. She complains about it sometimes, but she seems, I don't know, less stressed maybe? I could picture Jessica in scrubs instead of designer clothes, dealing with insurance forms instead of planning elaborate dinner parties. The woman who'd once spent my money on spa days now worked for a living. Grandma? Emma's voice was small. I understand now. Why you stopped helping us. I set down my pruning shears. Do you? Yeah, we were being, what's the word? Entitled. We thought you owed us stuff just because we were family. You didn't think that. Emma, you were a child. But I never said thank you. Not really. I just expected you to pay for things and be there when we needed you. But I never asked how you were doing or what you wanted. The honesty in her voice caught me off guard. This was growth I hadn't expected. Wisdom that came from watching her parents struggle and learning that money didn't appear magically. "What do you want now?" I asked gently. "I want to know if you're happy. You look different. Lighter, I guess." I was lighter. I'd joined a book club, started taking watercolor classes, even begun dating a kind widower named Frank who treated me like I mattered. I'd rediscovered parts of myself that had been buried under years of enabling and people-pleasing. "I am happy, Emma. Happier than I've been in years." "Good." She smiled, and for a moment she looked like the little girl who used to help me bake cookies. "I miss you, though. I miss you, too. Could I visit sometime? Just me, I mean. Not with Mom and Dad." I considered this. Emma was nearly 16 now, old enough to have her own relationship with me, separate from her parents' drama. "I'd like that very much." Her smile widened. "Really? Really. But Emma, you need to understand something. I'm not the same grandmother I used to be. I won't be giving you money or buying you expensive gifts or solving your problems for you. I don't want those things. I just want to talk to someone who doesn't treat me like I'm fragile or stupid. Your parents don't treat you like you're stupid. They don't tell me the truth about things. They think I can't handle knowing when they're struggling or scared. But I'm not a little kid anymore." I looked at this young woman who'd been forced to grow up when her family's world fell apart, and I felt proud of who she was becoming. "You can visit anytime you want, but you have to get here on your own, and you have to be honest with your parents about where you're going." "Deal." She grinned. "Can I come next Saturday? I want to hear about your art classes." "How did you know about my art classes?" "Mrs. Peterson mentioned it to Mom. She said you're really talented." After Emma left to help with the move, I sat on my back porch with a cup of tea and thought about the strange turns life takes. 6 months ago, I'd been miserable, trapped in a cycle of giving and resentment that was slowly killing my spirit. Today, I felt more like myself than I had in decades. My phone rang. David's name appeared on the screen. I'd been expecting this call since I'd seen the moving truck. I answered on the third ring. "Hi, David." "Mom." His voice was different, quieter, less demanding. "I saw Emma talking to you. She's a lovely young woman. You should be proud of her." "I am." A pause. "Mom, I owe you an apology." I waited. "I've had a lot of time to think these past few months about how we treated you, how I let Jessica, how I failed you as a son." "Go on." "We used you. I used you. I convinced myself that because you offered to help, it was okay to keep taking. I stopped seeing you as my mother and started seeing you as a solution to our problems." "Yes, you did. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, Mom. I don't know how to fix what I broke." "You can't fix it, David. But you can choose to do better going forward." "How? How do I do better?" "You can start by taking responsibility for your own life instead of expecting someone else to rescue you from the consequences of your choices." "I'm trying." "The job at the college? It's not much money, but it's honest work. Jessica's working too. We're learning to live within our means." "I'm glad to hear that." "Mom, do you think we could try again? As a family?" I closed my eyes, feeling the weight of that question. Part of me wanted to say yes immediately, to rush back into the familiar role of fixing and helping and smoothing things over. But I'd learned too much about myself to go backward. "David, I will always love you. You're my son, and nothing will change that, but I can't go back to the way things were. I don't want things to go back to the way they were. I want them to be better. What does better look like to you?" "I don't know yet, but I want to figure it out. With you, if you'll let me." I thought about Emma's request to visit, about her maturity and honesty. Maybe the apple didn't fall as far from the tree as I'd feared. "We can start slowly," I said, "with respect and boundaries and honest communication." "I'd like that." "David?" "Yeah, Mom." "No more taking my money. No matter how dire things get, no matter what emergencies arise. That part of our relationship is over permanently." "I understand. And no more letting anyone else disrespect me in my presence or behind my back. If you want me in your life, you protect that relationship the way I protected you when you were small." "I will. I promise." "We'll see." After we hung up, I sat in my garden as the sun set, listening to the sounds of my new neighbors settling into their life next door. I thought about second chances and hard-learned lessons, about the difference between enabling and loving, about the courage it takes to disappoint people who expect you to sacrifice yourself for their comfort. My phone buzzed with a text from Frank. "Dinner tomorrow. I found a new restaurant I think you'd like." I smiled and typed back. "I'd love to." For the first time in years, I was living for myself, making choices based on what I wanted rather than what others needed from me. It had taken losing my family to find myself, but somehow in the process, I discovered that the person I'd been all along was worth fighting for. The woman who'd sat alone in that recliner on Thanksgiving, listening to her family celebrate without her, was gone. In her place was someone stronger, clearer, more complete. Someone who finally understood that love without respect isn't love at all, it's just elaborate servitude. And I was done serving anyone who couldn't see my worth.